Boom, 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 boom. All right, welcome to the Monday morning meetup. We are about to go live in just any minute now, so hold tight. Go live at the top of the moment, at the top of the hour. Okay, here we go. All right, great morning, great morning, great morning. Good to see everyone this morning. Good to see you. Let's see, Chris Bolden, David Mayer, good to see you as well. Will Ruha, good to see you on the West Coast there. Cynthia, good to see you. Maria, good to see you. Who else do we have? We got Betty Powell over here. Good to see you. Good to see you, Michelle. Joanne King, good to see you. James, good to see you. And everyone else that's coming in. I see a lot of people that are coming in. Today, we're going to talk about being impatiently patient when it comes to building your digital business, your digital publishing business, I should say, or any type of business that you're looking to build. One of the things that I've noticed over the years as I've built up my businesses, and just any type of businesses, almost all from the digital standpoint, is that it's extremely rewarding, but like anything, it takes an extreme amount of patience, right? Especially when you're seeing success stories all over the place, you're seeing the success stories of other people, and you're wondering, well, when is my time going to come, right? So it takes patience. So we're going to talk about that in just a moment. So before we get into that, how was everyone's weekend? Let me know. How was the weekend? We went away to the beach over the weekend, and for us, the beach is we got a property that's about 3 hours away from the beach, and we went there. We actually didn't stay long. We went there Friday, and we got back yesterday. We got back on Sunday, so we got back Sunday yesterday with like 4 minutes to spare and time for my daughter to get to her cheer class because she's got these. I'll tell you, talk about patience, like cheer and dance. If you any of you guys have any experience with it, or if you've ever had children that have been in like cheer and dance when they were younger, man, they train and they go through it. So whenever I feel like I'm slacking, I just look at my daughter, my 16-year-old's schedule, and I'm like, look, she's got school going on, right? She's got her digital publishing business that she has going on, and she's got like she's part of a dance crew or whatever you call it. She's been at this for 5 years, and I still don't have the terminology. She's been at it since she was 5. She's 16 now, 11 years, and I still don't have the terminology right. So she's part of her school dance team, and then she's part of the outside cheer dance team. So I'm like, when do you find the time? And she's top of a class on top of that, right? So her grades are up there. So whenever I start to say, you know what, man, this is just too much. I got a lot going on. I look at her and I'm like, how does this 16-year-old do it? And she still has a life, right? She's got a little bit of a social life, not much, but she's got a little bit. So, and I guess it goes back to having patience. It's having the patience, right? You've got to be there and you've got to say, look, in order for me to get to this level of where I'm the one that's no longer a base on the cheer team and I'm a flyer, depending on if you've got the weight to be a flyer, I've got to show and prove in order to be up front, right? And in order to have my coach pull me from the back and to be up front, it's got to take some patience. That's not gonna happen overnight. It's not gonna happen on day one, right? Sometimes it doesn't happen the first 6 months you're there. And as parents, you're paying your money, you're paying, the tuition for um her to be there, and you're looking at everything else, and you're like, oh my God, when is she gonna move up front a little bit? And out of 5 rows, she's slowly but surely moving up front, right? And it takes patience there. So Caroline, good to see you. Good morning. How's everything going? I'm gonna pin both of us here.
Hello there. Just had a delivery just at the time that we started. So that's
Nice.
good. That's all. Most shop, the groceries.
Great. Great, great.
So that's good. I'm great. How are you?
Doing fantastic. regaining my voice a little bit. You might have heard we went down to the beach and we just had an incredible time. So I didn't realize that it was St. Patrick's Day on, when was it? Friday or Saturday?
It,
Saturday was it, right? So
yeah,
we,
yeah, I should know that. I'm Irish.
there you go. See, and so we go down to the beach and on Friday we had an incredible time and some of our neighbors there. We've got some of the best neighbors there. They were just really, really, really cool. And I got to thank my wife for that because she is the relationship builder. She's the one that will go to someone and she's talking to them and she's building up the relationships and she's sending them cookies and all types of stuff. And right, but it pays off, right? She's making these small deposits in these relationships and ultimately it pays off. So we go there and as we're pulling up, we see our neighbors are coming out and they've got a friend and they're about to go up the street, which is called Main Street. And they're telling us that there's going to be this huge St. Patrick's Day parade and celebration that's going to take place tomorrow morning. And we didn't know about it, right? So this is Saturday. And they're like, we're going to go get our chairs on the beach. We're going to be out there at 7 a.m. in the morning because it gets really packed. And I'm like, ho, 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 ho. We just got here, right? And you're throwing all this on us. But I get up that Saturday morning to go to the gym. And it's like 6:30 in the morning. I kid you not. The streets are lined with people who have their chairs out already. They've got their St. Patrick's Day gear on, their hats. They've got beers already. 6:30 in the morning. All right. If you can
That's
imagine
not
this.
going to end well. That's not good.
And I mean, it's young people, it's older people, and it was a good sight to see like this group of people coming together and no foolishness. Everyone having fun, right? Celebrating the day. And so I'm leaving out at 6:30. I come back maybe about 9 o'clock, and now it's full-fledged at this point. The parade doesn't start until 10 o'clock. 6:30, you're out there, you're lining up. The parade doesn't start until 10. So I tell my wife, I'm like, these are diehard parade celebrators here out here, right? And we ended up
Oh, that's
missing it.
nice.
We ended up going to breakfast and missing it, but it was a great weekend altogether. So
That sounds perfect. Is that at Myrtle Beach where you?
yeah, it's in the
Yeah.
North Myrtle Beach area out there. So like Cherry Grove. So there's a
Nice.
few different areas there. I think there's like Myrtle Beach, there's North Myrtle Beach, there's Cherry Grove, which is a really nice area. It's a really cool it's a really, really nice area out there. Uh,
Nice. That's about 5 hours from North Carolina.
So
Is it?
from where we're at
From
in North
drive?
Carolina, it is about 3 hours. Yeah, about 2 hours
Okay.
and 50 minutes or so.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Nice weekend
not bad.
retreat.
Yeah, it is.
Nice.
Except for when you got to get back. Like I said, Summer had cheer practice at 2 o'clock, and we kind of got back. And then I got off the exit. I got off the wrong exit by
Oops.
accident. And then you get off that wrong exit, and now you got this 10-minute delay. So it ended up working out. My philosophy in life is everything always works out, no matter how difficult, no matter how tragic.
Just a detour.
Right. It always
Yeah.
works out. So we ended up making it in time. All right.
Oh my goodness. Was that deliberate what you just did there? A
What's that?
detour, but you get there in the end.
No,
Because we're going to talk
that
about
wasn't
patience, aren't we,
that
today?
that wasn't deliberate, but see, look at
Well
that. It works
done.
out. Everything works out. You see that?
Good
So
shout. Yeah.
yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So
Sounds
now you're
perfect.
working on so speaking of patience, right? So we're talking about patience, especially as relates to building out a digital publishing business. You're working on your Kindle Vella course,
Mm-hmm.
you and Aaron, right?
We are indeed. Yeah.
And there's a lot of early mornings, I suppose. There's a lot of late nights going into it. A lot of patience, right? There's some things that you're waiting on from other people that requires patience. There's some things that you're putting together that requires patience. You've sent me a couple of messages, and I'll look at Slack, and I saw where there was like 9 messages, and I'm like, oh my God, I need to check my messages over the last couple of
Yeah.
days.
I know. Why are at the beach?
Right, right. It takes some
I'm
patience
so
there, right?
jealous.
So
Yeah, but it's interesting because when you sort of things happen where you get delayed or you're on the phone waiting
yeah,
for something and they're like, thank you for your patience. Keep holding. Thank you for your patience. And I'm like, you don't know me.
yeah,
I am not patient. But actually in business, it's so important. Um, because I think often we we go into something and we just think it's going to be much quicker than it is.
Yeah.
Sometimes certain things happen quicker and it just surprises us, but often we think it's going to be okay. Well, I can get to this level in 3 months' time, and when it gets there, you're like, okay, is it already March? Okay, I'll get that book out next month. So the I think it's I think what happens, I was thinking when we were talking last night about doing this topic, I was thinking that I, there's a bit of an issue with building businesses online, because if we were opening a restaurant and we'd go and have a meeting with our bank manager, whatever, financial advisor, and or any sort of traditional business,
Yeah.
they would normally forecast you to aim to be in profit, obviously as soon as possible, but normally it's like a 5-year plan.
Yep.
Break even, reinvest, break even, reinvest. And of course it's a lot, it can be a lot quicker than that online. But I think once we go into something different, and I found this like an online business, for some reason I then expected it to be really quick.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't necessarily with a traditional business. I forget that, okay, I've got a 6-month learning curve
Yeah.
and I'm actually learning this stuff. And I think you can lose sight of that because we're so stimulated now. And there's so many distractions, and we're so used to just getting something. We order pizza, it arrives. I ordered my groceries at 11 p.m. last night,
Yeah.
and they've arrived. Like a big grocery shop. We do big grocery shops in my house. I don't know where this food goes, but it's a big, shop, uh, and you just start to then expect, but I think that, and in business, sometimes it's a bit like that, where it's so easy just to think, oh, this has been really hard for the last couple of weeks. Oh, this doesn't work.
Yeah.
Whereas we wouldn't do that if we're opening a restaurant. We'd know that, okay, I know it takes few years, whatever, sometimes 5, to get into a really good financial position. But that tends to often we forget that. And I think it's sometimes because I did this when I went into network marketing. There's different ways you can approach this. There's a sink or swim can be really good and very motivating. Your back's against the wall and you've got to do it. But I remember when I left the police, I left work when I was building my network marketing business, and I got to a good level, and I left work because I didn't have any business experience. So I didn't know about the fluctuations in business. And then what happened was, when the business did fluctuate, the ebbs and flows, and it was in a bit of a down. And then COVID hit. I sort of wasn't ready for that. I was really impatient, and my priority was to get out of my job as soon as possible. Now, if I was the sort of person that had a bit of excess there, I had another income coming in, happy days. But because then the pressure went on me, I then spiraled, and then it just sort of it went okay, but it didn't go as well as it could have done if I'd have had. So that's why, as we've often discussed, when I got to a level with this business, I'm like, okay, the devil is not gonna get me this time. I
Yeah.
know business can go up and down, so I'm just gonna stay in this job, just reduce the hours and just stay a little bit longer, reinvest everything back in, and just not get too excited. So it was quite a long time before I then left a job. And this wasn't it was a temporary job that I'd had after COVID. I'd
Right.
left the police a few years before that. So it wasn't a really high paying job. I mean, it depends on what the stakes are. Um,
It does.
but it
Yeah.
but when it was the right time, it was good. So I when I'm coaching people, I always say it depends what type of person you are, because it's going to depend what type of person you are. But don't just sort of depart your job too quickly. Just get this to a really solid place where if it went down, then it's still great.
Yeah.
You
And
can
you
you can
you
pay
know
your
how to
bills.
handle things, right? Because making that transition from a job and then to business, where you're going to see valleys and peaks, you're going to see all types of unexpected things. I mean, I can only tell you guys some of the things that we see. We'll see website servers that go down sometimes. You'll see
Yeah,
people that quit sometimes. You'll see people that will steal things from the business sometimes. You'll see We just had our PayPal account shut down the other day for one of our businesses. I was telling Caroline, and I think I spoke that up because Caroline and I were talking about things. And I'm like, look, I've had PayPal for 15 years and I've never had a PayPal account shut down. And then Murphy says, oh, I forgot about you. I've been too busy with all these other people over
Shutting
here.
everyone else down. Yeah,
Right.
your
I
turn.
forgot about you. That's right. And literally 24 hours later, I can laugh about it now because I know that there's going to be a resolution. But Ty, 10 years ago, I would have been panicking like hell. Right. But I know that, so what? PayPal account's down, not so what, right? In a really cavalier sense, but it's something that happens and I'll get it back up, right? But it takes
And that's
patience.
experience. That's experience and learning that when you've reacted like that in the past, it doesn't sort of make the resolution happen quicker, slows
Yeah.
it down. And I think when you go through those different experiences in your business, and we've all got them going on, then you're just literally training your patience muscle, aren't you? Your resilience muscle. So that when things do happen, it's like, okay, someone's left the team in the middle of a launch. Okay, we got this.
Yeah.
That's fine. Let's just pivot and do what we need to do.
Wouldn't like it to happen now, but what am I gonna do? So what I do is look, what am I gonna do about it? The best I can do is continue to move forward, right? And God, I know you know that I'm strong, but I wish you wouldn't test me so often and not test me right now, right? Couldn't we have done this when everything was cool and flowing as it should be? So, but
Yeah,
that's it.
but it is like a muscle. And I think when we're traditionally when we're in jobs, we tend to be naturally a bit more patient. In the corporate world, well, I don't think there's a lot of patience going on in the law firm world. It just was very dynamic and fast moving. But when we were doing projects and things, you knew a project had a certain amount of time, you knew there were deliverables,
Yes.
etc. So, but because you've got to behave yourself when you're working in an organization, you can't go and wobble in front of people, especially if you're managing those people
Yeah.
or if you're working in a team, and it's really important that you're all supporting one another. So we sort of naturally expect that we're going to have to feel patience. We might want to leave that job, but we know we can't do that for a year, or it is what it is at the moment. Or something else has happened. We might be working with someone and we really want them to leave, but they're not going to leave, and we've just got to be patient and make decisions based on that. So we do that, but I think sometimes when we're building our own business, it's so loaded with personal goals, more so because it's our baby, and emotion. And so I think one of the great pieces of work that I have been evolving in is just this sort of um, trying to be a little bit more neutral in my emotional responses, and uh, trying to be more still so I don't go through extremes of, wow, this is amazing, to, oh,
Yeah,
so
the
when I
extremes.
have, yeah, when I have good, I mean, my my royalties very steady, nicely steady, and growing now. But if I dipped, that would freak me out before. But I now would be okay. Okay, let's have a look at you know what's happened, what are the reasons, is there something we can change, and then that always leads to better growth. But I think typically, when we're building Kindle businesses, it takes a while for people to write books, whether that's us or people writing for us. It
Yeah.
takes patience when you're working with people remotely, because you can't go and take them out for a coffee and say, please don't disappear on this project. So it's a completely different type of work. And I think it's very easy to spiral into this taking stock too early because there's some students somewhere that's done it really quickly. They've got to particular goals really quickly, and you're looking at them and thinking that you should do the same. What are they doing? Because you don't know what's gone on before they started the business, or how much work they've done. So I think that that sort of trying to see our online businesses a bit more like traditional businesses.
Yeah.
I want to start building courses. Okay, it's going to take me a while to build subscribers, but it's so easy to take stock and go, oh, I wanted 20,000 subscribers by now. No, that could take a year or 6 months or whatever, you know?
I
So
think the best thing
patience.
is to, you set the expectation, but you be grateful for the end result. And it's something that I have to always remind myself of as well. Whenever we do a launch, if we're launching a new series or whether it's a new digital product or a course or a coaching program, set the expectation, right? Because I found myself, this was last year, we launched something and I found myself, the results were good. No, the results were damn great compared to what they would have been when I first started. I mean, they were incredibly great compared to when I first started. But because I was measuring it to where I'm at now, at that point, I was a little bit disappointed and I had to kind of reel myself back. I let myself be a little bit disappointed for about 10 minutes. And then I reeled myself back and I said, Ty, you're being a brat right now. You're being very ungrateful. You're being very entitled, right? Instead of being grateful because yes, we didn't hit, what our expectations, but man, we greatly surpassed what you would have thought was possible just a few years ago.
Yeah,
So
because as you get levels of success, your your sort of
comparing it to that last,
success, yeah,
yeah,
your
yeah,
success and everything, it just sort of adds on to it. And then you forget what it was like a year ago, 5 years ago, or
yeah,
whatever. And because we've got very short memories like that.
very
You
short.
know, yeah, when you're growing anything, you've got to give it time, to grow. When women are pregnant, they don't start saying after 3 months, you got to get out, I've had enough of feeling crap, or feeling
Where's
sick.
this baby?
You don't want that baby to come out until it's ready. And you don't want your business to explode at the beginning, because that sort of doesn't feel exactly right. Because if it's going to do that, there's going to be a point that changes. You want it to go level and up. And there are so many, I think when people are building any online business, but if we think about publishing, there are so many different components to it. Like if you made a decision that you're going to outsource stuff,
Yeah.
writing and editing and all of those sorts of things, it's so easy because it can be a little bit tough finding the right people. And it's so easy. A few weeks in, you've spoken to 50 ghostwriters. What the heck? What's going on? It's so easy then to think, this is a little bit hard. Or it could be months, you know. But if you were building because once you get those writers, if you can get those people, and some of those people will stick
Yeah.
for the long term.
For
Some
the
won't. It'll
long
be,
term,
yeah,
like
some won't.
customer
It'll just be a
support.
project.
I
Hmm.
so when I first started hiring for customer support, I had people that didn't work out. I had one girl, Tanya. Her name was Tanya Mar. What was her last name? I forget what her last name was. I think it was Marble. And she was with me, and she was great and worked out for the first 6 months. The next 6 months after that was every indicator of I should have fired her. I kept her around for another almost a year before I totally got rid of her. And then I had another customer support person that I had trouble keeping, and then another one, and then I get someone like Sherry, who's been with me for like 15 years now, right? And then I get like Peter, who was just telling me, we were just kind of he's like, I've been around for 5 years now, and Michelle, 4 years, right? And
Yeah.
but before that, it's like I couldn't find people, I couldn't keep them. Either they just didn't give a damn, they were just here for a paycheck or whatever, right? You look at companies like Twitter. It took Twitter 2 years before they actually took off. Like no one used Twitter. Like it couldn't stick, right? You look at someone like, I mean, this just happens across the board. You look at someone like some of the great composers, right? Mozart. The guy started when he was 10 years old. He started composing when he was 10. He started writing when he was like 5. I don't even know how that's even possible. But he started really composing when he was 10. But he didn't create one of his greatest masterpieces. Concerto, I think it was like number 2 or 3, until 10 to 13 years later. He's like 22, 23 years old. So starting at 10, 22, 23 years later, 22, 23 years old. So 12 years later, he creates this piece that just takes off and does well. right? So it's you look at Facebook. Facebook has been around for almost 30 years now. Not Facebook, I'm sorry. Amazon, almost 30 years now, right? Over 25 years.
Yeah.
All of these
And it's but I think it's always about well, it's a lot of things you can do, can't you, to help yourself, to acknowledge, I'm if I'm feeling a level of impatience, and we all get like that. And I've had loads of people start their publishing business, and even people that have invested in coaching that have quit after a few months or a few weeks. And then sometimes what happens is I'll go off and try a few more things and realize it's not like the something I've just viewed on YouTube. There's actually quite a lot more to this than you can do this and you can do that. So then they come back and go for it, or they don't. And sometimes people move on and disappear because they're not resonating, because your business has got to
Yeah.
resonate, and sometimes you don't know whether it's for you until you're inside it. So there's no judgment on anyone. I've done that with businesses, but I think it's for me, it's about, okay, I'm human, I can't help it, I'm a bit impatient. So what practical things can I do to just get level-headed when I get those moments where I'm sort of taking stock too early? I did it with a new pen name, come on,
Yeah.
because I was so used to launching books and them doing really well. Well, they would with a pen name that's been around for 3 years, that I'm that I've invested in. So new pen name, you're like, oh, no one's looking, I'm not ranking in the top, whatever. And so we all do it. But um I think that it's about sort of taking stock of that and remembering how far you've come. But I think when it comes to things like getting ghostwriter, I mean, I keep talking about ghostwriter because that comes up all the time. Getting writers, there's a lot of great people out there on the platforms we always recommend on Fiverr and
Yeah.
Upwork. There's a lot of people that aren't. But if you come at it from a place of, I'm going to get somebody into my business, and my objective is that they're going to stick around with me and we're going to like form a really good business relationship, and you sort of approach it in the way that I want to talk to everyone if I can, meet them if I can, and these platforms allow you to do that now
Yeah.
on the platforms, which is great. Whether you're working with a designer or a writer, and I'm going to have high expectations, but I'm also going to bring my best me to every single conversation with them. And so when I'm meeting people that I'm potentially going to work with, it's equal level. It's sort of, I'm there, we're both equal, and there's going to be respect from my point, and also I'm going to sort of share with them my goals, and also give them the option to work with me. And I think it's about just building up some resilience around this, because when I was in network marketing, if you've been in network marketing, this piece of getting people to work with will probably be possibly a little bit more straightforward than sort
Yeah.
of how I was when I went into network marketing. And we were taught, network marketing, that industry puts out the greatest self-development you could ever have in the world. And I remember, typically I would meet, not just talk to, not just send a message, easy, 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 but go and physically meet them, because it was mainly face-to-face business back then, in whatever it was, 2018. Meet them, have coffee, buy them coffee, have a meeting to see whether they wanted to, providing we sort of set it up beforehand and I wanted to work with them, to see whether they wanted to join my business. And typically, probably 1 in 20 would come in. And so there was this process, and I knew the process, that they were the numbers, and out of those 20, 1 in 20, you might then get 1 in 20, maybe a bit less, that actually does what they want to do, and they set up a business, because a lot of people would start and stop and do that sort of thing. So I had to really learn
The starting and
patience from
stopping
that
is the
point of view.
worst.
I mean, that's the worst when you've actually coached these people for a while, and then you've got to, they go like, where do they go? Where do they go?
It,
They've
it's
just
it's
been,
the it's
they've
the
just
worst
emigrated
thing.
or something.
It's the worst than anything. I'll give you guys a story really quickly, and this is gonna be a short one. I have an appointment that I've actually got to run to. But I remember when I first started investing in the stock market and investing in mutual funds specifically. So investing in the stock market, what I would do is every so often, every 10 days, every 2 weeks, every maybe once a month, I would go in and I would put some money. I would put $100. I would put, $50. I would put $75, sometimes $200 into a particular stock, right? And I did this. I started when I was about 27, because before that, my mom would always tell me to invest in bonds and things like that, because that's what she knew, right? Because of the surety of it, right? And the guarantee, no pun intended, but surety bonds, right? But the kind of guarantee there. Whoa, you got that. I saw that. But then I started dabbling in the stock market more and more and more. And I would do it every once in a while, but I wasn't consistent. And it wasn't until I started dollar cost averaging. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna dollar cost average, I'm gonna make this an automatic thing every single month, on every single week, actually. On a Monday, I'm gonna have $75 come out of my account. $75, right? And I did that for years and years and years. And I looked up, and before I knew it, I had multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars invested in the stock market, right? Because I was able to dollar cost average, and then I'm consistent with it. And it's not the impatient thing. Prior to that, I was very impatient because I'm physically going in and I'm doing it. I'm investing sometimes. And because the impatience was also wearing on my faith, which will happen, the impatience will wear on your faith. I'm not putting in consistently the amounts that I should put in, right? I'm not saying the return that I thought I should see. I'm not saying the growth that I thought I should see. So those weeks when I looked at my account sometimes and I didn't see that growth, the faith is not there. So what am I doing? I'm putting less in, right? Or I'm not putting anything in, right? Oh, I'll go buy some beer with this, $25, right? Or whatever it may have been. So and then the other thing was in my Kindle business and my digital businesses as well, the same thing. So I tell you guys the story all the time of when I used to go to marketing seminars and people would be like, hey, what are you working on now? And I'm like, I'm still publishing Kindle books. And then you go to another seminar, what are you working on? I'm still publishing Kindle books. While that guy that's asking, he's now worked on 3 or 4 different things, right? And he's not able to get any traction because you're starting and stopping, you're starting, you're stopping, you're starting and stopping. And if you think about like some of the best investors, some of the biggest businesses out there, like real estate developers, you wouldn't see where they go all in on real estate developing. And then the next year or the next 2 years, now they're into creating a YouTube channel because they want to go in and become the next Mr. Beast, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to then go in and instead of developing and real estate developers, they're kind of consistent, right? So if they're developing residential real estate, they're not going to jump around and then go into commercial real estate and vice versa. They're going to play the long game. And I think that that's where a lot of us make our mistakes is we don't play the long game. And because of that,
Absolutely.
we're starting over and over and over and over again every time we jump to something else, right?
Yeah.
I always put things in terms of relationships, right? It's like as a young man, my son Tyler, he's dating, he's 20 now. So I'm like, you find the individual that has your core values to a degree, and that's the person that you stick with. They may not have everything. They may have the 80% and they're missing the 20%. But if you keep jumping around looking for that 20%, you'll now sacrifice what you could have gotten, right? The good that you could have gotten in this one person that had the 80%, but you're focused on that 20% that she's missing. So it's the long game
Good
when all
advice.
stuff. It is the long game
It
in all of this, right?
it
So
is. It is. And You know, when we are in those moments of, that's the thing, when the impatience comes in, completely natural, and we all do it. We're human, we can't help it. I'm human, I can't help it. That's my way of approaching anything when I've messed up. I'm human, I can't help it. Let's like make a list of how I can avoid it next time. I heard that actually in the that's in the Happy Money
Happy pocket
book.
full of money. Yeah.
No, Happy Money, Ken
Happy
Honda.
money. Happy money.
Yeah, my favorite book.
Yeah.
I always say that. And the one of the things that I tend to do quite often is when I'm feeling like that, then the doubt does kick in. Do I trust myself? It's like we don't trust ourselves. We don't
But
trust
you know,
ourselves that we can do
so
it.
I'll give you a solution for
Just
that.
stay with it.
The solution for that is when I had this moment yesterday, right? Yesterday, actually. The solution is tomorrow will be a better day. So whenever you get that doubt and you just don't like, you just don't think things are going to work out or when things are not working out, you just have to remember like tomorrow, and I'm not talking about literally tomorrow. It could be 2 weeks from now. It could be 2 months from now. It will be different, right? So
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
something
yeah.
that over the last couple of years, I've really kind of internalized and just really remind myself of like, oh my God, this is crazy. We just launched this product, and we'll do that with you guys sometimes. Sometimes we'll launch things, and the patience that's required, we might go in and let's say we'll launch a date for KCF Live, which I've got a meeting with Justin on a tech team today, guys. So we're gonna have a new date for KCF Live, and we'll put it out there, and the signups start to trickle in. They're trickling in, and guess what? We're like me. I'm like, oh my God, nobody's signing up for this damn thing. This is gonna be a dud. No one's signing up. No one wants to come to this. And then what happens like 2 weeks, 3 weeks before, that week before, 2 days before, you get a flood of signups. Now imagine if 2 months before, I'm seeing this trickle of signups that come in, and it happens every single time. Every single time. And I'm like, no one wants to do KCF Live. They hate us. They don't even like us anymore. Imagine I give up. We give up at that 2 month period,
Yeah.
right?
And we've done events where we've afterwards said, you know, this is what we'll do differently next time, you know, and that's all part of the growth. But I think when those moments come when we are in that taking stock and it's like, whoa, 6 months into this business and this is where I'm at, haven't secured the team. It takes a while to secure good team and get them to stick around. And all of these and the self-doubt comes in and the lack of self-trust. That's the time where, yeah, the affirmations are going to really help. Listening or reading something motivational about business is really going to help. But also, one of the things that I did at this point when I was going through this in the first year of my business is I'd then go on to because I was publishing. That's all I've done up until now, apart from working with you guys. I would go on to Amazon and I would look at these authors that I want to be like, you
Wow.
know, when I grow up. I'd look at these authors and I'd just look in their author central and I'll see how long they've been doing this for. And then I'll look at their early books. Now, you can't tell from books in terms of ranking. That sort of is hard to tell whether they did really well as soon as they started from a ranking point of view, because a book might be released like 5 years ago. But you can tell when you look at the early books and you see they've got like 10 reviews
Yeah.
on the series, or 5 reviews or 20 reviews. That would suggest, not always, it mainly is accurate for the long term. It doesn't affect your sales ranking, reviews don't, but it would suggest that at that time that author had that business out, they weren't making a lot of money on that series out, they weren't making a lot of money on that series because it's the first one, it's the second one. And then you now look at these authors about 2-3 years down the line, whatever, maybe more, maybe a little bit less, and they're getting 2,000 reviews on a book after about 3 or 4 months, 5 months, whatever, because they've stayed the course, they've kept patient. And then you look at how many books they've published and you can see from the backlist of their books on Author Central, because I always check by publication get day, you can just see how it's growing, and that will be reflected as much as you can tell in the sort of money that they're getting from their business. So I think when we're feeling like that, we've got to look at these people and say, yeah, they might be earning all this now, but look at how much they've done, you know? And some of these people have written these books themselves. Look at how much they've done. Not saying it takes years and years and years to get into profit, because of course it doesn't. It's going to be down to you. But then one thing when we are being impatient that we don't know how many nights they stayed up. We don't know what's happened with their previous life before they started publishing. So everyone's going to come at it from a different level of energy, from a different level of consistency, etc. And I think it's so dangerous. And this is why comparison is so dangerous, to look at situations and then think, oh, you know, and then you start doubting yourself. They're better than I am. Or maybe they just got writers straight away and they've got the perfect team because my team aren't. And they start, you know, being like that. And actually, one thing that I try and do every single day in my business is pretend you're in the corporate world.
Mm.
You show up every single day being the best you can be, just like you had to be when you were acting out there in the corporate world, when you were standing up in front of people and training barristers and all the rest of it. What were you doing then?
You
There were
know,
many days, you know, and that's how I try and show up.
that's you know what?
Um,
That reminds me of like so I actually do something similar, and I got this from Jim Rohn. And he said when he first started speaking in front of audiences, which reminds me of our quote, um,
yeah.
he said that sometimes he would go out to these events and it would be 3 or 4 people in a room. And he made the decision that whether it's 3 or 4 people in a room or 3 or 4 thousand people in a room, he would give them all, each room, the best that he could give them. He would give them all of himself. Right. So as I started to do events, and it becomes very intimidating when you start looking out in the room, or even if it's a virtual room like this and you only see 3 or 4 faces, right? But Jim Rohn's words would always be in the back of my head. So give them the best, whether it's 300 or 3 people, go at it. And what happens is you serve not only your audience, but you also serve yourself, because that's practice where you're getting better, right? Your story of offers, you were talking about looking at offers, and to mind came James Patterson. So on Sell More Books training that Willie and I did about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I kind of talked about James Patterson. And here's a guy who started writing. Does anyone know at what age James Patterson started writing? I think it was in his late 20s. So I think it was about 27, right? But he didn't really start taking it serious until he was in his 40s, his mid 40s. Does anyone know how old he is now? He's 76 now. Does anyone know how many books he's published? Could you care to guess? He's published hundreds of books that have sold over 230 million freaking copies. So the more research I did on him, the more I'm just like spending hours looking at his stuff, and I'm just really I'm in at this point, because I'm like, here's a true example of patience and dedication. Do you know how much he's worth? He's worth almost $1 billion, $800 million or something like that. But he started when people told him that he sucked. He started when people told him that his writing wasn't going to get him anywhere. It was worthless. So it's the patience, right? It's the long game. And here he is. He's still around now. And he's still publishing books. He's got this system, right? So
And also, yeah, and also I was thinking we will get to our quotes. I've got two quotes. The other thing I was thinking when you were talking like that, I was thinking that if you do your best, and we all have days and times in the day when we're not feeling our best, but if we come to the table with whatever we consider when we're at the top of our game. So for me, it was these days in London for many years. And I try and approach my business in that way more fun in the business. But if you come at the place of complete professionalism and preparing when you're having meetings and just really dedication, even if you're doing this for an hour a day on top of another job, whatever you do, if you bring your best everything to the table, and nurture your relationships and nurture the people that you care about, then and do the best you can, as we've talked about a lot, to stay in sort of happiness and joy and all of those things. You don't need to be that patient because it all just moves a little bit quicker, and the right things come in, the wrong things go out. People might leave your team, but then you realize that was probably for the best, you know, for them, me, whatever, and things roll smoother. You still get your Murphy's Law thing going on. You still get your stuff you can't control, but you're gonna have better, smoother days. Generally, when you're going through that process. So it's about, yeah, we're patient, but we're not expecting you to sort of sit there for 5 years and with no results. It's not like that, because what we don't want to do is, it's always difficult when you talk about patience, isn't it? Because we want results, and if we're in alignment with what we're doing, and our last guest talked about being in alignment with what he was doing, if we're in alignment, then patience is less of an issue because things just work out. So when I'm teaching people, again, I'm bringing up writers as an example. When I'm teaching people about getting writers, I talk a lot, and it sort of sounds a bit weird because it doesn't sound tangible, but I talk a lot about bringing just expect it to be really easy. Just expect that you've got a choice of people to work with, and come with that level of expectation and just watch what happens, whereas often people will hear things like, it's hard to build a team, or this is hard, and then they'll think, of course it's hard, this bit's going to be hard, and they go in like that.
With the expectations, right?
But one thing that I think is a really good technique, as well as affirmations and all the other things. Sorry about the noise in the background. One thing
can't hear it.
Can't you hear the Hoover?
We don't hear it, no. I don't hear it.
It's not my children, when you come in to a conversation, or whatever you're coming into, and you're coming in as your best self, I think it's also important to sort of try and switch off from what everyone else is saying about their experience with that particular thing. And you've got to sort of keep in your own corner and do your own thing. Obviously take part in networking and training, but very much sort of keep in your own lane. And when I was building my business, I really did that. I didn't look at other courses, although I haven't even got time to go through all these modules. I'm not going to start going out there. Right. I didn't go and do anything. So it's about keeping in your lane and keeping focused, but also accepting that, I'm going to have to put some pretty a lot of work in this, and then just journal all the successes as you go. I sold a book today. That's a major success. How great is that? If someone had told you 5 years ago,
you can look back at that, right? Now you're like, when you have the day when you don't sell a book, or
and then when you are having those moments of impatience, 6 months in or whatever, you can go back to that journal and say, oh my God, look, I've written here that I was so nervous that when my book was launching, but I sold one book. And like today, 6 months later, I'm selling 1,000 books a month or 100 books a month, and it's progress. And I think it's just the enjoying it as you go, which is sometimes a difficult thing for people to do. And they say, enjoy the journey. But I think that just means so that daily trying to get into the place of satisfaction. I've got a great designer for my cover. How satisfying is that? And staying in that space.
One step at a time. That's it. All right, guys. So let's see. We got 2 quotes. I'm going to post them. If you want to share them, I'll post them both. And
thank you. So the first one is short and very sweet, by Mahatma Gandhi. To lose patience is to lose the battle. Right. Very famous quote. Mahatma Gandhi, to lose patience is to lose the battle. And the someone who we quote all the time, Jim Rohn, in any situation you can think of, impatience is a source of weakness and fear, while patience represents substance and strength. In any situation you can think of, impatience is a source of weakness and fear, while patience represents substance and strength. Jim Rohn. And that's so true.
It
Often
is
when we're
so
in
true.
impatience, is because of fear, isn't it? It's not
Yeah.
going to work. I'm not good enough. I'm going to run out of money. All of those fear things, those lack things.
Yeah. As you were reading that, I was thinking back to the example that I showed with you guys when I first started investing in like the stock market, that impatience and the fear created this weakness, and when I wasn't consistent with it because I wasn't seeing the results that I thought I should see. And when, I mean, you're looking at the stock market, it is a long-term gain, right? Now I look back and I'm like, I was sharing some of this stuff with Lenny last week, and then Marquand Russell, about how happy I am that I invested in the stock market and continue to do so, and continue to do so at greater levels, and to this day continue to do so at greater levels. Even when at a moment I just never thought that I had the money to do so, right? Because when things are tight, you're first starting out, right? You just don't think that you can do it. And we all here start with $1, start with $5, right? Start with $10. And I'm so glad that I was able to be naive enough to believe that. So sometimes you have to be naive enough to just believe that things are possible. And you got to be a little bit
Yeah.
delusional as well, right? So you have to be delusional enough to think that, okay, I hear people having some horror stories of ghostwriters, but it's not going to happen to me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
One of the things I'll show my wife often sometimes, and this will be the last thing, and then we'll leave out, guys. I'll give you an example. Like when I see people who have sickle cell anemia, and I see them going through very tough times, right? I'll say a prayer for them. I'll, be empathetic for them, but I'll tell my wife, man, I feel so bad for him. Like, but this is not my story. As a matter of fact, at the beach, I was with my two of my uncles and my father's brothers. And one of my uncles, Uncle Gary, he has two children that have sickle cell anemia, and they're both, I think, in their 30s, and they have it really bad. And I try to talk to them and share different things, and he was telling me about how hard of a time they're having right now with their health. And as he's talking, I'm saying a prayer for them and I'm wishing them the best. But I'm like, I'm empathetic, but that is not my story. That's not going to be my story. So you could see this in any walk of life. You could see someone else not doing well and you wish them the best, but you don't claim it. Even groups of people,
Yeah.
right? We don't have to subscribe to groups of things, right? We can be sympathetic for them and empathetic for them, but we don't have to subscribe to those things. And at the same time, so that's what I mean by the delusional part, right? Yeah, not gonna happen to me. And you could also be delusional in a positive. Yes, that's gonna happen to me. Oh my God, like this guy is 100 and freaking whatever he is. He's like Moses, and he's still fantastically good looking, right? You could be delusional in that aspect, right? The world's over there looking amazing, right? That's gotta be me right there, whatever it is. The guy's got, here she is, she's got her publishing business and it's doing fantastic. I don't know where to start. I haven't had the success yet, but I like her. I like the direction that she's going in. I'm gonna model her and I'm gonna beat the pants off of her. Even though I don't even have the money yet, I don't have the resources, I don't know how I'm gonna do it. You got to be delusional in that sense.
You do, you
Right? So,
do. I've got a funny thing for you just to leave us on.
yeah,
When I go on Amazon and look at other authors that I'm modeling, when I start off a pen name, I tend to model, and then obviously you go and you go from there. And I always go, wonder if this one's Thai. Right, I'm going to beat the hell out of them.
right, yeah, yeah,
I wonder if that one's Thai. I wonder if that one's part of Thai's business. I'm going to
yeah,
make sure. And but in a light-hearted way, and
yeah,
that's just that sort of motivation is, and just the language that you use, and what we talk about all the time, the language, that the way that we describe ourselves. And we know that we all, I'm pretty sure everyone here knows, because they knew it anyway, that we can change matter with
yeah,
thoughts. And so if we can change matter with thoughts, we can. When I'm talking to people about business, and I will go, I always say to them that, you just, if you're doubting yourself, if you don't, I think this was something that, I can't remember if it was you, Ty, that came up with this quote, or if it was Stephen Pierce, they came with this quote in one of our meetings, and it's sort of like, if you don't trust yourself and believe in yourself, believe in us, believe in the community.
Oh, that was
And
Stephen. Yeah, that was Stephen.
yeah, and I remember that, and that's sort of really stuck with me. If you don't trust yourself, then and that helped me when I was helping other people. And you hear things, don't you, all over the place. People are like, oh, Amazon is like 50 million books on Amazon, and it's
Yeah.
we're going to this business, it's much easier, and I'm saturated in this genre, saturated, is there such a thing? You hear all these different things, you're like, oh,
I hear it all the time.
yeah.
I
And
don't hear it as much now, to be honest with you, because I don't hear it as much now because I'm not as conscious. I'm not, my reticular activating system isn't honing in on it as much now. But when
but
I
it's easy not to, because you've got the results, as I
but
have.
no, it
Yeah,
still scares the heck out of you sometimes because
yeah,
so I was listening to Greg Caesar, who we had on as a guest here, brilliant marketer, highly successful marketer. So he calls me up on Friday last week, and he's like, "Hey, how do you deal with hecklers?" I'm like, "What do you mean? You're doing a comedy show? Or what are you doing? Stand up now?" And he's like, "How do you deal with hecklers in your webinars when you're presenting?" So he had like 12 people as he was doing a live webinar, just going in on a chat in the chat box, just saying the meanest things to him. And Greg
yeah.
is the nicest guy. If any of you guys ever know Greg or Greg Caesar, he wants everyone to win. Everyone, even
We've
if
had him
you
as
guys
a
don't want.
guest, haven't we? Yeah,
Yeah, we had him as a guest. We need
yeah,
to get
yeah.
him back actually.
He's
But
great.
so he's like, oh my God. He's like, dude, I've done a gazillion trainings and all I could focus on was this and that and the negative stuff that they're putting in the chat box. He even says that his digital business, because he lost his dad a couple of years ago to I forget what it was, but he lost him to but anyway, he goes in, he's doing this presentation. He says, having a digital publishing business helped me to be there for my family when my dad was going through his hard times. And then in the chat box, someone says, "Oh, here he goes. He's trying to play the sympathy card now, right? Claiming that his dad passed. Now,
Woo!
how cruel can you get?
That's so
How
me.
cruel could someone get, right? That's a real low blow, right there. Well, right. So, and what it reminded me of, and I told him, I said, look, that's just a test, right? You've never had that number of people before. Every once in a while, you might get one person, right? I think at the last KCF Live, or maybe the one before that, we had one person. Do you remember that person, Caroline? The
I
one,
do. Oh, yeah, 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 I do.
and we talk about that person, right? When we get those people, we talk about them during our meetings. And we have one, but to get 10 to 12 people. So you guys are gonna see that. Marty talks about like when he started publishing, how he got that one or two or that slew of
I think
negative
he
reviews.
left quickly, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was just like,
Um,
oh my God, this is not for me. And then he came back and he just went with a vengeance. He said, I'm gonna show them and I'm gonna continue. And you see how successful Marty has
Well,
been.
it's interesting. Yeah, and it's interesting because when you do that, it's so, even if you're confident, it's so easy to let something hit your confidence. It was at the last KCF Live, I think it was. I was on stage delivering, and then we were talking about the fast pass at one point, and then somebody in the chat, not in our community, or not in our community at all, a new
Yeah.
person in, said, I've heard about though everyone's muted on the calls, no one can say anything, and I just looked at the quote and I thought, and I almost distracted myself from what I was saying. And then I just sort of laughed at myself and carried on, because people, they don't mean to be like that. I think it's just that they want to prove that things don't work whenever they start anything or go to
Yeah.
something,
Oh wow. Yeah.
and so it sometimes happens. But back to what I just wanted to say before we go, that when we are in this sort of self-doubt, it's all right for all of them, or they've got some results, or these people on Amazon have been there for like 10 years and they're doing this. I always say that, if you thinking someone's told you something's saturated or something doesn't work, scam, whatever people are saying, I remember nearly all the time, several times a week, just to keep myself motivated, I just go and play on Amazon with a glass of, I talk about this in the fast pass call, with a glass of red wine, And I'll go on there and I look at all the massive amount of pen names and people that are ranking really well and doing really well. And I would just look at those people, then people in the community before me that had come in and were putting, that were talking about how they were doing and stuff. And I'd be doubting myself sometimes in the first sort of year or so. And then I would look at all of that and I'd think, well, if you think about it logically,
Yeah.
it's not a lottery on there. It really
No,
isn't.
it's
If you think
not.
about
Yeah.
it, it is if you don't do any marketing. If you think about it logically, if you've got like really great content, but it's great, you've had other people tell you've got other people to check than you've got the best cover, you've got the best copy, your description, your product page is looking great, you're investing in advertising, you're doing all the marketing, you're following the modules of all these other people that have done all right. It's sort of, it can't go wrong if you put the amount of work in and you're consistently publishing. It how could it not work for you when it's working for so many other millions of people? But it requires the time and the patience and the investment and the and so I always say to people, when you're doubting yourself, just look at, this is not fake on there. There's,
Yeah. No,
the
exactly.
author world's dying, whatever people say, you hear things and then you look at it and think, no. It might change format over the years, but there's so much proof that pen names, people doing what the processes and the strategies that we're doing are making, good living out of it, etc. When they put the work in and they put the time in. And so I just think, when you're doubting yourself, just look at everyone. Well, they're
Yeah.
not superhuman or we're all supernatural, but they're not doing anything differently other than believing, doing the work, believing, doing the work, believing every day, you know.
And then once you start
And
to do it enough, you start to get the results. You don't even have to put as much of an effort into the belief because it's built in there, right? So there you go,
exactly,
guys,
all the time when you've got it
all
all
the time.
automated. Yeah.
All right, have a great Monday. I'm off to my appointment, and after that, I'm gonna head out to the gym because I've got the belief that these muscles are gonna continue to pull out at some point, guys. We'll see you. See you all. Bye bye.
Take care. See